the monster preacher, a wolf in sheep's clothing. He appeared ordinary, unremarkable, just another face in the crowd. Yet beneath the veneer of normalcy lurked a monster. Gary Heidnik, the name, still sends shivers down the spines of those who remember the horrors he inflicted. He was a preacher who twisted faith into a tool of control. He used religion as a mask to hide his depravity. Heidnik's story is a chilling reminder that evil often wears a familiar face. Behind the facade of piety, Heidnik was a predator. He carefully constructed an image to lure unsuspecting victims into his web of terror. This is the story of Gary Heidnik, the monster preacher. It delves into the depths of his depravity. It explores the horrifying crimes he committed within the walls of his Philadelphia home. His case stands as a stark warning about the monsters that can hide in plain sight. The making of a monster, a troubled childhood. Childhood should be a time of innocence, a time of safety and nurturing. For Gary Heidnik, it was a breeding ground for darkness. Born into a dysfunctional family, his early years were marked by turmoil and neglect. This toxic environment played a crucial role in shaping his psyche. It set him on a path towards depravity. Heidnik's parents' relationship was volatile. It exposed him to constant conflict and aggression. This early exposure to violence desensitized him. It warped his perception of healthy relationships. The lack of emotional support and stability created a void within him. He would later attempt to fill this void through perverse means. These early experiences left an indelible mark on Heidnik's young mind. His childhood was a tragic prelude to the horrors he would later inflict on others. A twisted desire for control. The genesis of a criminal mastermind. As Heidnik grew older, the seeds of his depravity began to sprout. His troubled childhood had left him with deep-seated psychological scars. He developed a perverse need for control, a desire to dominate and manipulate others. This craving for power became an all-consuming obsession. It manifested in increasingly disturbing ways. Heidnik's early forays into crime were marked by a pattern of deception and manipulation. He used his intelligence to exploit others, preying on their vulnerabilities for his own gain. His crimes, initially petty, grew increasingly bold and sinister. Each act fueled his sense of power, further twisting his psyche. His desire for control extended beyond material gain. He craved the power to subjugate and dominate others completely. The House of Horrors, behind the facade of the United Church of the Ministers of God. In a quiet neighborhood in Philadelphia, a house of horrors stood unnoticed. It was here that Gary Heidnik, under the guise of religion, established his own twisted dominion. He called it the United Church of the Ministers of God. To the unsuspecting eye, it might have seemed like any other place of worship, but behind its walls a sinister reality festered. The church was Heidnik's hunting ground. It was a place where he could prey on the vulnerable under the cloak of faith. He used his position as a self-proclaimed preacher to gain the trust of his victims. He lured them in with promises of salvation and support, but his true intentions were far more sinister. Beneath the floorboards of this unassuming house, Heidnik constructed a hidden chamber. This was his dungeon, a place of unimaginable cruelty and suffering. Section 5. Luring the Vulnerable. A web of deception and manipulation. Heidnik possessed a cunning understanding of human vulnerability. He targeted women who were marginalized and overlooked by society. He preyed on their desperation, offering them a sense of belonging and hope that he knew he would ultimately destroy. His tactics were cruel yet effective, a testament to his manipulative nature. He often approached his victims on the streets, presenting himself as a friendly face offering help. He would listen to their problems, offering words of comfort and encouragement. He feigned empathy, skillfully masking his true predatory intentions. His charisma and apparent concern disarmed his victims, making them more susceptible to his manipulation. Once he gained their trust, he would lure them back to his house with promises of food, shelter, or money. He exploited their need for stability and security, trapping them in his web of horror. Heidnik's ability to manipulate and control his victims was central to his reign of terror. Section 6. Inside the Abyss. A glimpse into Heidnik's Chamber of Horrors. The basement of Heidnik's house was a scene ripped straight from a nightmare. It reeked of death and despair, a subterranean hell where the cries of his victims went unheard. This was his kingdom of cruelty, a place where he could indulge his darkest fantasies without fear of reprisal. The horrors inflicted within those walls would forever stain the conscience of humanity. He chained his victims to the walls or imprisoned them in a shallow, water-filled pit dug into the concrete floor. They were subjected to unimaginable tortures, both physical and psychological. Heidnik controlled their every move, their every breath. Their lives were reduced to a living hell, their spirits slowly crushed beneath his iron fist. He would starve them for days, only to offer them food covered in dog feces. He forced them to endure horrific acts of sexual abuse, often filming his crimes to relive his depravity. He used electric shock as a tool of punishment, their screams echoing through the darkness, a chilling symphony of suffering. While Heidnik reveled in his cruelty, a glimmer of hope emerged from the abyss. Josefina Rivera, one of Heidnik's captives, refused to succumb to despair. She clung to life, her spirit unbroken despite the horrors she endured. In a remarkable display of courage and cunning, Rivera would become instrumental in ending Heidnik's reign of terror. Rivera noticed that Heidnik, in a twisted display of trust, allowed her limited freedoms. He tasked her with supervising the other women, seemingly believing that she had been broken by his torture. This perceived trust, however, would prove to be his undoing. Seizing a moment when Heidnik's guard was down, Rivera managed to convince him to let her use the phone. This was a gamble, a desperate plea for freedom that could have easily backfired. Rivera's call connected, and she was able to reach a friend who immediately alerted the authorities. The walls of Heidnik's carefully constructed world came crashing down as police stormed his house of horrors. The discovery of his dungeon, the chains, the pit, and the terrified women sent shockwaves through the nation. The full extent of his depravity was laid bare, and the world recoiled in horror. During his trial, the prosecution presented a mountain of evidence against Heidnik. His victims, their voices trembling with a mix of fear and fury, recounted the horrors they endured. Their testimonies painted a chilling portrait of a man consumed by his own twisted desires, a man who treated human life as his own personal plaything. Despite overwhelming evidence, Heidnik maintained his innocence, claiming his victims were lying. The jury, however, was unconvinced by his charade. The horrors uncovered at Heidnik's house left an indelible scar on the city of Philadelphia and the nation as a whole. The case became a chilling reminder of the vulnerability of women, particularly those living on the margins of society. It ignited a debate about social safety nets and the need for greater awareness of predators lurking in plain sight. Heidnik's crimes also raised uncomfortable questions about the nature of evil and the potential for darkness to fester within seemingly ordinary individuals. His ability to maintain a facade of normalcy while perpetrating such horrific acts shook the public's sense of security. It served as a stark reminder that monsters don't always lurk in the shadows. The case also highlighted the importance of speaking out against abuse and holding perpetrators accountable for their actions. Josefina Rivera's bravery in contacting the authorities served as an inspiration to others who had suffered in silence. The story of Gary Heidnik is a chilling descent into the darkest recesses of the human soul. It is a stark reminder of the fragility of innocence and the devastating consequences of unchecked evil. While the world recoiled in horror at his crimes, it is essential to reflect on the lessons learned from this dark chapter in human history. Heidnik's case underscores the importance of recognizing and addressing the signs of psychological disturbance. His troubled childhood, marked by neglect and abuse, undoubtedly played a role in shaping his warped worldview. By understanding the factors that contribute to the development of such monstrous individuals, we can work towards prevention and intervention. Furthermore, the case highlights the importance of fostering a society that values empathy, compassion, and respect for all its members. Heidnik preyed on the vulnerable, those who felt invisible and forgotten. By creating a society where everyone feels valued and supported, we can reduce the likelihood of such tragedies occurring. The story of Gary Heidnik forces us to acknowledge the darkness that can reside within humanity, yet also serves as a powerful reminder of the importance of vigilance, compassion, and the unwavering pursuit of justice.